Hello guys. Here Mr.L and I bring you guys another reaction video for the channel. Today I'm gonna react to a video that some ordinary gamers YouTuber upload. He did it 16 hours ago. I already left the like and yeah, let's jump in. Pretty much the title is on Portuguese, and if you go and trying to translate that, it's pretty much saying that Nvidia is lying to us. So let's go
And
see what
gals,
he
me
has to say.
Mudahar, and I think Nvidia is lying to the people, all right? Marketing BS is marketing BS, but I want to start off with some positivity. Obviously, I think you all know that I'm talking about those brand new Nvidia graphics cards. And, I'm going to be honest with you, the
The way he says that, he's trolling a lot.
prices ain't that bad. Now, if one is
Ain't
looking
that
at the
bad?
prices for an Nvidia card, I'll be real. It ain't looking half bad. Now, the 50
I can see this is gonna be a funny one.
90, yes, is a workstation card with 3,400 AI tops. Is coming at $2,000 US. Okay, so obviously it's more designed for people that have that crazy money to burn. But I feel like for most people who are just getting into going for a reasonable upgrade, that 5070, ladies and gentlemen, ain't actually half bad for $549. That's actually, from what I believe, reasonably around the same price one would expect from Nvidia, except slightly lower. Nvidia cards, it really felt like used to be getting more expensive, but that is actually cheaper than what I thought. Now, why am I calling this video Nvidia is lying? Well, because recently in their reveal, I saw
Probably because you have some information about the issue, I'll guess. But yeah, let's go ahead and see what you have to say.
Jensen Huang come on stage and talk about some wild things, like a 4090, which is the world's fastest GPU as of today,
It's the one I have.
something that I have in my computer, right? Like to show you where my computer specifications are, I run, of course, a Ryzen 9 5950X, which is a recently
Well, that one I don't have. Unfortunately, I'm still with the same one I had before. It's a Ryzen 7 5900 and something X. Um, for sure, once I'm able and have the possibility to upgrade, I'll try to do that. But yeah, right now I have pretty much the same GPU he has, but the CPU is way ahead of me.
aged CPU, but my 4090 is probably the best in class for raw graphical power on a computer. But of course, a 4090 is now suddenly equivalent to the 5070, which is giving 4090 performance. Now, did I just get scammed? Is this advancement so huge that for literally a fraction of the price, the 5070 is actually beating that big chunky GPU that I have in my system? The answer is no, ladies and gentlemen. The 5070 is not matching the 4090 performance. See, Nvidia has
Actually, sorry about pausing, guys. I'll try to um, keep my um, replies as short as possible and less as possible, so we could actually see what he has to speak. But if you actually go search, the graphics that we use on our computers is just a small fucking portion of actually graphics. If you actually go see the Nvidia um, um, CEO talking on podcast and it actually shows a real graphic card, he has like 1 meter is like 1 meter tall. It's huge. Imagine running a game with like a meter tall graphics card, you know. So we are just using like a small portion of a graphic card. Of course, it works. If it didn't work, we didn't have computers. But yeah, let's keep going, guys.
has been doing a lot of AI shillery for the last couple of years, and it's because of some of their massive software enhancements that they finally managed to meet the 4090. As long as you've got all the DLSS there, as long as you've got all the frames being generated, we are sitting at a point where one of their GPUs is now rendering 75% of a video game's frames through itself, through the driver, not through the game itself. It's actually wild when you get into it. Now, when going on to Nvidia's actual
Didn't know that.
website over here and seeing like their comparisons, the 4090 is running a game like
Cyberpunk, DLSS 3.5, full rate on. Huge difference.
Cyberpunk 2077 at 106 frames per second.
That's a huge difference, but quality graphically, I don't see nothing different. I'm running this, yeah.
But the 5090 is running it at 240 frames per second. In reality, the half of the frames that you're seeing, at least on this screen, are completely fake. They are generated by the actual driver on the actual computer in something known as DLSS frame generation. And the amount of frames being generated and assists provided has shown that at 4K resolution, running a game like Cyberpunk 2077 with path tracing gives you, with no assists, 28 frames per second on the card. And with all the NVIDIA assists and generation, you can turn that 25 frames per second into 231 frames per second. Now, I might be like, whoa, what kind of arcane black magic shit is this? And the reality is, this is kind of how NVIDIA has been doing since they've launched ray tracing. Now, for anybody that doesn't remember ray tracing's beginning, I'll just give you the quick and dirty, okay? NVIDIA launched ray tracing, real-time ray tracing, with the NVIDIA RTX 2000 series.
Mm-hmm.
So how this stuff works is there's special hardware dedicated onto the actual GPU, which allows computer games to actually run ray tracing algorithms, ray tracing math, in a real-time capacity. Ray tracing used to be this, thing that was actually quite honestly the holy grail for 3D rendering. For a lot of game developers, it was not something that was easily achievable by software alone. And until Nvidia came along, everyone pretty much relegated it to pre-rendered CGI imagery or, something that required offline rendering, something that you couldn't do with a video game. So what ray tracing does is effectively simulates light. So for instance, the light that's coming into my room is bouncing off numerous things. It's bouncing off this table, it's bouncing off this mic, it's bouncing off me. And those rays are what NVIDIA's, ray tracing cores are trying to calculate. And once you can calculate that, you can then reflect that in video games with more, realistic lighting, more realistic reflections, more realistic shadows. Now, obviously, the more effects you're trying to calculate in ray tracing, the tougher it becomes. Now, one of the games that came out as a showcase for when the 2000 series launched was Quake RTX. Now, I believe this is beyond ray tracing. This is when you go a step further and start doing path tracing, which is where you're calculating multiple bounces and you just have a lot of rays you're working with. It leads to some pretty impressive lighting. Now, when the RTX 2000 series launched, running this game without any assists at all actually gave you a pretty low frame rate. So in order to help with that, NVIDIA also created something known as DLSS, or Deep Learning Supersampling.
Yeah.
Now, this technology effectively takes a video game, renders it at a low resolution, and upscales it through artificial intelligence algorithms. And this makes it so that an image that would be...
Actually, I actually saw something on YouTube, a podcast of a guy actually speaking about this, and he was pretty much saying something along the lines like, nowadays companies that create games actually are creating games at cost graphically to actually gamers to upscale with DLSS on Nvidia and other means of upscaling the graphic, and it's actually hurting games. But yeah, let's keep going.
Typically 720p can look reasonably like 1080p. And there's a pretty good video by a channel known as 2 Clicks Philip, where he actually goes into the DLSS systems and runs games at such low resolutions, and it's pretty surprising how DLSS is good enough to take a low resolution and make a pretty reasonably clean image out of it. But this algorithm, when it came out, wasn't exactly super impressive. It had its issues. You don't get benefits without costs somewhere. So when you're running a game underneath the resolution of your monitor and you're upscaling it, you're going to come across things like artifacting, like smearing, like ghosting. And honestly, over time, Nvidia has made this situation better, okay? They have mitigated a lot of the issues that DLSS faced and have actually made it so that nowadays a DLSS image, if you put two people side by side and made them look at an image right there in front of them, they might not be able to recognize the native
The
image
difference.
from the DLSS
Yeah.
image, right? Depending on what setting is running. So, again, in a very short amount of time, we went from running games like Quake RTX to something like Cyberpunk 2077 with
And this is my point of view. I do think you should upscale everything to 4K with the DLS, whatever the name is, on Nvidia, everything. I do think Cyberpunk, it's probably one of the most graphically amazing games that has humans ever built. It's actually amazing. You have some videos for on YouTube with um, mods running on the game. It's so realistic that you go crazy. It's amazing. And nowadays, there's like for action, like PvP games, we need a FPS, of course, but there's a limit on how much FPS your eyes actually can process. Actually see. You can't go above that. Let's say the limit of a human eye is like 326 FPS per second, and you're running on a game like let's pick a game from let's pick cards, and you're running 500 FPS. Most of that your eyes are not even capturing. So imagine that you're running 300 FPS, right? But your graphic on that game is actually really good, and it's substantial good to the point where you can actually see the shadow at the same time you see the character move. That is going to improve your quality of playing instead of having more FPS. Like say the more, let's say you
full
have
path
like NPCs at a distance. The farther away the NPC is, the pixel is gonna get smaller, so it's gonna get harder to actually see what he's actually doing, if he's moving back or forward, left or right, right? So um, let's see you improve that to the point you can actually see the character as good as something close to you. Now you just don't need the 500 FPS. See what I mean?
tracing. So
So
imagine
yeah,
going from rendering a
and
pretty
this
simple
is
PC
already
game all the
impressive.
way to
This
one
quality
game
is
that has
already
tons of
impressive.
materials, tons of complexity in the rendering. Honestly, a game that is generationally different
The driver is not that good.
from Quake, all in a short span of time. Now, in order to get Cyberpunk to run from 25 frames to 231, what NVIDIA is doing here is, again, running the game at a substantially low resolution and then upscaling it through AI. And then, beyond all of it, they've introduced something known as multi-frame generation. Now, frame generation is not new. They introduced it with the 40 series of GPUs, and what it does is basically, let's say you're running a game at 60 frames per second. Now, if you want to run it with frame generation, it can go all the way up to like 120 frames. But what it does is it inputs a frame in between, each real frame.
Yeah,
So at some point in the actual graphics card driver, it actually uses onboard hardware like optical flow accelerators and data from the game, where as you're moving forward, for instance, in Cyberpunk, the images you're seeing here, half of the frames in this image are completely generated by the driver. And again, it's a complex way that it does this, and it doesn't come without its issues. There are problems like smearing. The UI can have issues. There are problems with the frame
yeah.
gen.
For example, I was playing a game. The name is Once Human. Actually, I'll bring you guys a couple of videos for Once Human if you guys want. Just leave on the comments if you want that. But I was playing the Once Human, and in the game you have like a bike that you can drive around the map, so you move faster towards the map. Of course, you can teleport, but that's out of the point. Um, so you drive with your bike around the map, or whatever you want to go do, you know. So if you look when you are driving, you can actually see the back tire, like the smearing of the image, and you can see like a mirror image of the tire as ghosts going backwards. So the bike is moving forward and you can see a ghost like behind, you know. That's shit, bro.
generation, but Nvidia is trying to fix
It
it.
takes you it
Now,
takes you out of the game, if you understand what I mean. It takes you like, when you see that, you cannot unsee it anymore. So yeah.
again, one of the realities of all of this is as you generate a frame, you're also increasing the game's latency. Remember, this is not a real frame rate, okay? This is like half of the frames being actually real and the other half being fake. You're gonna have input lag. So when Nvidia introduced like adding 2 more frames instead of just one, yeah, now most of the frames generated by a graphics card are
Oh god.
effectively fake. What Nvidia is showing over here, 75% of the frames here are not real frames. So Digital Foundry actually managed to get a look at how this worked on ray tracing overdrive. Now, when it came to input lag, Digital Foundry did in fact find a good average between like all these different options. So for 2 times frame generation, the average input latency or latency in general was 50.9 milliseconds. That number climbs to 55 when you add the extra frame. And then when you go full on with the, 4 times frame generation, it's 57 milliseconds. Now, this may seem pretty high, and honestly, you will feel the input lag even with times 2. But I will say, in actual use cases, it's very playable for a single player game. I wouldn't
Yeah. If you're playing like a single player game like Cyberpunk, Black Myth Wukong, um, God of War, those types of games, you know, Last of Us, those types of games, I don't see no problem, you know. Like the problem comes when you're playing with uh, a game like Black Desert, you know, you have PvP going around, you know. This is gonna mess up things for you, and it's gonna get worse if you go play a game like God or Battlefield or Counter Strike, something like that, you know. Fortnite, you know, this is gonna mess up your gameplay. But yeah, on a single game, a single player game, it's not gonna matter too much.
bring this for something like multiplayer, but that goes without saying. I'm somebody that used to play games like Rainbow Six Siege pretty actively, so I know what a bad input lag is.
It's like,
Now, when I play Cyberpunk 2077 with path tracing and all these effects applied, I have put 200 hours into Cyberpunk, and I have enjoyed my experience on the 4090. But I will never lie to you and tell you that I don't feel some input lag with frame generation. So I have to wonder again how bad it's going to be when you add 2 more frames instead of one. You're going up substantially, and Nvidia claims they're not going to be input laggy. But again, when you're adding in a bunch of fake frames, the possibility for ghosting, artifacting, visual issues, and
yeah,
all of these problems go through the roof.
they
Now,
start
path
to
tracing
pop
is
on.
incredibly expensive, which is why Nvidia is generating frames rather than trying to get this out
Man, every time I see this game, it's unreal, man.
with raw rasterization.
Imagine a game like this, the size of this, the size of, and of course I do understand in like probably like 10 years you're gonna have CPUs and graphics cards that this kind of game is gonna be a joke. They can run these games like 200 FPS, real FPS, you know. But for now, uh, the if you upscale this on a linear path, let's say, so it goes up. So, for example, here is the beginning of technology, and it starts to go up, you know. And graphically, the games they are meeting each other at the same point right now. So both like graphically and like CPUs and GPUs are at the same point right now, at least what I feel, that one doesn't go above the other one, you know. So we are at a point of no return. One is gonna start to linear, and the other one will keep going up. Which one, I don't know, but this is what I think it's gonna happen. You know, like let's say uh, graphic graphically, the games are coming up, and now they are gonna start to go on a linear part, you know, and the technology, if it goes up and goes to this point, and graphically we stay here because it's gonna get to a point where you don't need no more graphics because already looks real, looks like real life. So yeah, now you are like in a straight line, and meanwhile GPUs and CPUs and components for your computers keep going up with the technology, you know. So it's going to get to a point where we are so above in technology that the technology can run like real graphic looking games at like 200 FPS because it's no longer an issue. But right now, I think uh, we are meeting at the same point, you know. So at least this is my perception.
So if you look at the top left, that is my frame rate, 22 frames at around 32 by 9 ultra wide. So the resolution is 5120 by 1440. Everything is maxed out. It is path traced. And the thing is, it's laggy. I'm not using any assists whatsoever. And this actual image looks very sharp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what it looks like now. Now in the middle here, you'll see what my actual game looks like with DLSS enabled, but no frame generation. So the frame rate improves substantially. And then with frame generation, that frame rate then nearly doubles. And of course, if you want to get really technical, looking close into these shots, I don't think you're going to find much different, you know, with the naked eye, unless you really know what to look for. So even with all these assists, I'm going to let you be the judge of how effective NVIDIA's upscalers are in comparison to traditional rasterization. Now, it's because of a lot of these assists that some people have kind of thought that these graphic cards are a lot cheaper because maybe they contain less power to them. And that's not entirely true whatsoever. There is actually an upgrade to traditional rasterization performance, meaning no ray tracing, no assists, no nothing. And it's somewhere around the ballpark of, I would say, 30-ish%. Somebody on Reddit did a pretty great math for Nvidia, and they showed that, yes, in some cases you're looking at like 132% gain. In games where things are CPU locked, like Far Cry 6, you're looking at 27.5% like gains. And of course, that's with things like ray tracing. Generative AI gets like 100% because, yes, they're putting a lot of their eggs into that basket. But the thing is, overall, you're looking at around 20 to 30% gains off of the 4090 if you're comparing traditional like native rendering from 4090 to like the 5090 in games like Cyberpunk where you're not putting in any of these like generative assists. The moment you start putting in those generative
I see what he means. Yet this is not gonna stop. At least not for the next 5 years. If you're running the 4090, no reason to upgrade to 5090. It probably like 1 year you're gonna have the 6090 or even worse than that. So it's no reason to upgrade for the next 5 years, unless if you're playing like for real, you know, like you thinking on going like competitive, like real shit game, you know, you should go. But if you like casually or just play like every single day for a couple hours, or yeah, this is already good.
assists, obviously the frame rates are substantially different. Going from 100 frames on a 4090 to like 230 frames on a 5090 will be noticeable. Now, again, how much will the input lag affect this? That's yet to be determined until you actually get a mouse in your hands and you're willing to judge for yourself. But for
Yeah.
NVIDIA to come out and say the 5070 is somehow equivalent to a 4090 is just marketing bullshit. And I'm sorry, I'm tired of anybody saying that it actually isn't. One of the other things that I kind of saw in regards to some of these cards were things like VRAM. Now, when you're looking at the VRAM for a card, VRAM is pretty important because, as long as you are increasing your resolutions and you're filling in more, higher resolution textures, you're going to need a lot more of that VRAM. And the 5070 comes with 12 gigabytes, which seems surprisingly low.
It is.
And the reason I say it is because honestly, we're at a point where a lot of games are going through the roof with their visual requirements. Even 16 gigabytes still doesn't seem like enough of a buffer zone for games that are slowly creeping up. Now, obviously, if you go to
To
the
feel
5090,
comfortable, to feel comfortable, you need 32.
it's 32 gigs of memory, but this is like a really advanced card for, again, more professional grade users. The average gamers are probably going to be sitting around these first three cards.
Sure,
Again, I like to talk about this from a mid range gaming PC perspective. Not everyone has the money for like a 5090.
sure. That's the main reason.
So when you're looking at things like VRAM, for instance, and memory bandwidth, it's pretty impressive. All right. But again, that VRAM amount has me.
Now look on the difference. This is crazy. Like you have a spaceship on your house, and you talked with Elon Musk. Oh, Elon, and he replies, "Yes, brother, I'm gonna get to Mars first than you." I'm joking around, but yeah, it's crazy that.
A little worried. And Nvidia is doing a bunch of things with AI and compression techniques to make sure that amount of VRAM works. And maybe they've got their head on right, maybe they've got the answers, but it's still something that I have a bit of a worry about. And again,
Mm,
it really shows me why these cards are priced pretty well. Again, Nvidia is a company out to make money, and
price. For for this, not bad, but for that, it's like 2 times this. So let's see. There's a big difference over there. That's a big difference too. That's a big difference. That's a big difference too. Yeah, I don't know. It feels a little bit on the pushy side of a price, but yeah,
again, I do believe these cards are designed to not be loss leaders because at the end of the day, I don't think Nvidia really believes they're in competition with any of their actual
nah.
competitors like AMD or Intel because none of those cards are matching to the same level that Nvidia is. There's a reason why people are buying Nvidia cards. You may not like
There's a
Nvidia,
reason why everybody wants the enemy.
but there's a reason why their cards are substantially at the top of their game.
Yeah,
There's a lot of positives and there's a lot of negatives that I find with this GPU release, but one of the things that does kind of hit me is the advertising. I don't believe that Nvidia is releasing 4090 performance on a 5070. And I think the fact that we're kind of pushing in for AI, we're pushing in for, again, a lot of these assistive models to come and up the frame rate instead of actually increasing it, in a raw manner is something that I feel like should be a question that is asked. We're getting to a point where ray tracing and path tracing in video games is being introduced incredibly aggressively. And at the rate that this new level of graphical technology
it's being integrated so aggressively that even companies already building the games or pushing out the games out to the gamers with a slight downgrade on graphics to upscale with things like Nvidia is doing.
is coming out, NVIDIA is kind of going out of their way to discover assistive tools, right? Because at the end of the day, going from something like Quake RTX all the way to something like Cyberpunk 2077 and all the future games that come out down the road, NVIDIA is going to have to keep finding ways to generate frames because trying to render this stuff raw is going to make these graphic cards jump from actual affordable prices like $549
To the same point I was talking about, I think, on the beginning of the video. Like if you actually go on searching in YouTube and you go trying to actually find a real graphic card from Nvidia, you will see how big that thing is. It's huge. It's a spaceship. It's unbelievably big. And yeah, I understand what he's saying.
all the way to actually 2000 if we're trying to achieve the same level of frame rate without any of these assists. But yeah, we are in a world where it's kind of funny if you really think about it. One of my favorite like communities on the internet is fuck TAA, where we talk about like again the idea of TAA as an anti-aliasing method that is traditionally pretty decent in some cases, but if you start to look beyond the cracks, images become blurrier. It's wild when you play games from 10 years ago and you play them at native resolutions and you look at they feel like new games because they look so sharp. But with Nvidia's tools and a lot of these new upscalers and frame generators, we went from having crystal clear, sharp frames all the way to now being used to looking at ghosting, artifacting, input lag is now,
Mirroring.
going higher as we're generating more and more frames.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think at some point, the returns are really going to start diminishing pretty heavily across the board for this kind of stuff. Now,
Yeah, I do agree with him, but at the same time, like I was saying, with if you upscale this on a line, let's say like I'm doing with my mouse, I see the graphics are doing graphics. When I say graphic, I say on games, the graphic, the actual graphic, like this. Nowadays we are going up, and CPUs and graphics and components for PCs are going up, and we are meeting at the same point right now. This is my point of view. I'm not saying like it's the right thing or the right answer. This is what I feel it's happening. Let's say that um, I'm gonna use your nose, bro. Let's say his nose is the point where both lines of graphic and CPUs and GPUs are meeting. You know, at one point, graphics are gonna go on a straight line. They're gonna stop going up, and components and technology are going to keep going up. So when this happens, I don't think we're gonna have this problem anymore. But I think on nowadays we are at the same point, so we're having this problem.
to be fair, do I recommend you get the 50 series? There's only one way I'd recommend it.
If you
It's
have
probably if
money,
you're upgrading from like a 2000 series card. I still think looking at all of this, a 30 series card is still good enough. Most games are still going to be fine with a 30 series card.
yeah,
Unless you're upgrading from like literally nothing or a 2000 series, the 50 series makes sense. And the reason I'm probably so pessimistic is because I am at a 4090. So for me, a 5090, while yes, the new software looks impressive, it's not worth paying
yeah, for
$2,000
me too.
for a 20 to 30% increase in raw performance. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, just wanted to talk about this stuff because, again, I am a video gamer. I am a PC guy. I talk about PC stuff. And hopefully, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I do want to give you my real, honest facts and honest like understanding of the situation. I'm not going to be an Nvidia shill just for the sake of being an Nvidia shill. I like
Thanks.
Nvidia, I do, but I think the way that this has kind of been billed is definitely we're definitely hyping up the software more than we are really the hardware in this situation.
Yeah,
And again, that's really up to anybody. If you're somebody that is all in this frame generation world, then this is a great card for you. But I think a real question has to be asked going forward into, what is in a video game frame anymore? Is it even actually the video game or is it some AI generated stuff from the actual graphic driver? Ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am out.
yeah, guys. Um, yeah, I enjoyed. Really good video. I will leave a link for you guys down on the video on the channel, so you guys can actually come and see it for yourselves, or actually go in and see all the videos he has. Um, if you actually do that, subscribe to the guy. He has pretty good videos. Leave a like on this video too, and yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. This is just one more reaction of kind of a series of videos I like. I feel like they are interesting. We can learn too, and yeah, I intend to bring more of this kind of videos. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Like always, leave a like if you want. If you don't want, it's a free world. Subscribe, and take care of yourself and take care of the ones you love. I'll see you guys on the next episodes. See ya.